Amen. How y'all doing tonight? How y'all doing tonight? Who's not from Texas here? Okay, how are y'all doing tonight? You guys. Where are my Texans? How are y'all doing tonight? Some of you are distracted right now by my amazing hat. This is common in Texas, believe it or not. Saw a student walking home from class wearing one of these today. It's a real deal cowboy hat. It's my favorite hat. My wife got it for me. It's my third cowboy hat that I've had. I've had 2 straw hats, but this is my first felt hat. And for Christmas this year, she finally said that I could have a felt cowboy hat. Do y'all like it? Does anybody want it? You can't have it. This is my cowboy hat. And I love wearing it around. And sometimes when I wear it around, it kind of throws people off. They're used to seeing me in the church setting, and then they see me in the cowboy setting, they get a little thrown off. And just the other day, I was at Cabela's, had my hat on, was with my little boy James, and was walking down the ammo aisle looking for ammo for my 7-mag. Sit there, and you never feel like somebody's kind of watching you sometimes when you're perusing in the store. So I could tell this lady's kind of eyeing me as though maybe she knows me. So I turn to her, I smile at her, and I wave and say, "Hey, how you doing?" She kind of, "Oh, I didn't know that was you." And I still have no idea who this woman is at this point. "I had no idea that was you. I'm used to seeing you at church on Sundays, and I guess I've never seen you with your hat." And I'm thinking to myself, so have most people never seen me with my hat. Then a couple days later, I was at STARS, the STARS mentor program, and again was wearing my hat and walked into the school. And I'm over in East Waco, and I walk into J.H. Hines and start walking down kind of the main hallway, and all the students are walking past me, and you can see all of them are just like staring up, and you hear them whispering, "Is that a cowboy?" And one boy is like, "Are you a cowboy?" And at this point, I have 2 options. I either make his day and say, "Why, yes, young man, I am a cowboy." Or I break the very, very sad truth to young boy and tell him, "No, sir, I'm faking it until I am making it. I am, in fact, not a cowboy. I'm just basically a pastor that likes wearing a cowboy hat every once in a while." I mean, don't get me wrong, like I know how to ride horses. I've worked cows every once in a while. I own guns. I know how to shoot them. I've never shot while riding a horse. But I'm not a real cowboy. The difference is real cowboys eat, sleep, and breathe cattle. And it's cattle. It's not cows because there's different types of cattle. A cow is a heifer that has had at least 1 calf. Every cowboy knows that. A steer is a bull that has lost his manhood, okay? And a yearling is what? It's around a year old. Congratulations, you figured it out. Good job. So, like, a cowboy knows these things. I am barely learning these things, and so I just smile and just keep walking past this kid and keep faking it till I'm making it. But here's the thing. That kid thought I was a cowboy because he, like many of you that are from out of state, is conditioned to believe that somebody that is wearing a cowboy hat is, in fact, a cowboy. Better yet, maybe they're a movie star. Better yet, maybe they're in the rodeo. When you see somebody with a cowboy hat, this little boy was conditioned to believe that it must be a real cowboy. Now, tonight we're talking about dating. So what in the world does my cowboy hat have to do with dating? The reality is that in the same way that many of us are conditioned to view cowboy hats as a sign that is a cowboy, similarly in relationships, we are conditioned to believe that the person and the pathway towards dating, also towards marriage, is supposed to look a certain way. And I'm assuming that if you're here tonight, you're at least somewhat interested in dating somebody that is Christian. Anybody? Okay, good. So that was my assumption. But the reality is sometimes people put on a Jesus cowboy hat and are basically just faking it until they're making it. This is the Christian, the Sunday best Christian. I look real Christian on Sunday. I don't drink or smoke for at least those 4 hours of the morning. I'm a real good Christian on Sunday. I don't cuss for at least half the day until the Cowboys play. I am a good Christian. But the reality is does that person eat, sleep, and breathe Jesus, or is that person just wearing a Christian cowboy hat, hoping that you think he's a Christian cowboy? Friends, many of the times we are tricked, we are deceived by what is physically in front of us. And we have to reconsider, what are we doing to evaluate the person of our dreams? How many of you want to find your person? How many of you here tonight are like, I actually came tonight because I heard it was dating, and Lord knows I need some help finding my person? Or how about many of you that are like, I am ready to get on that pathway? You know that pathway? That's the pathway towards marriage, which is, believe it or not, the purpose of dating. It's not a pathway towards nowhere. It's not a merry-go-round of death. It is, in fact, a pathway that hopefully will take you towards marriage. If you don't want to get married, don't get on the pathway. If you don't want to get married to the person that you're on the pathway with, don't get on the pathway with that person. But regardless, today we need to discover a little bit more on what does it look like to not let looks deceive us into believing that just because they look like, sound like, and talk like a Christian, they actually are. And for some of us, maybe this is a more personal message where today we are learning that it is not just wearing a Christian cowboy hat that makes us a Christian. It is a deep and meaningful relationship with the living God. And that, friends, today is what I want each of you to know, that there is a living God who wants to have a deep and meaningful relationship with you. Do you believe that? Yeah. I've been married to my beautiful bride, Rachel Ann Whyte, for 6 incredible years. They've been incredibly fun. They've been incredibly hard at times. They've been incredibly fruitful. We have our 4th kid on the way, praise the Lord. And if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that I've never gotten to a point in marriage where I'm like, man, I just wish that she looked more Christian. I've never gotten to a point where she's looked at me and been like, man, I just wish she appeared more Christian. No, at the root of anything that's taken us past a hard season into a fruitful season is a deep and intimate personal relationship with Jesus. It is so much more than just wearing the cowboy hat of Christianity. It is a personal and intimate relationship with Him. And so before I go any further, some of you just need to know that before you go on this quest of finding your person, before you go on the adventure of entering the pathway towards marriage, you need to first know the person of Jesus. This is the Jesus that I know. Romans 5:8 says this, but God demonstrates His love for us in this, while we were still sinners. Everybody say, still sinners. Christ died for us. And that is good news to you today, because I think when we talk about dating, there's some of you in the room, they're like, never dated before, not really hurt by it, don't really care, maybe I'll think about it someday. You're probably a freshman. But there's others of you in the room that are like inundated with these obsessive thoughts about who is going to be my forever person, who is going to be my bride, who's going to be my husband one day. But again, at the foundation of it all is this message that no matter what your past of pain and brokenness is, the person of Jesus covers it. And no matter what you're walking into tonight, no matter what hiddenness, no matter what secrets, no matter what's been done to you or what you've done to other people, Christ died for you while you were still sinners. And I don't know about you, but I am still a sinner. I'm a redeemed sinner. I'm a saint that is moving away from my sin and into my identity with Jesus, but I still mess up. And every day I remember that God, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And so tonight I want to unpack and debunk some of these ways that we've been conditioned to believe certain things. And in a little bit, you're actually going to get to hear from my beloved wife herself. She's going to come up and we're going to do a Q&A on the back end of tonight's message. So for those of you who have burning questions, if they don't get answered in the first 25 minutes, you have a chance to ask them to us personally. I was like, earlier today, I actually asked her because I was going, babe, I can't get up there and represent the entire other 60% of the room that is ladies. Like, I need your voice. I need you. And fellas, Lord knows you need to hear more from her than you need to hear from me tonight. And so she's going to be coming up to answer some questions. But I want to extend grace in the room tonight first. Because sometimes it's just a guilt trip when we talk about dating. And I want you to know that it's actually, for a lot of what you're experiencing, it's not your fault that you're conditioned the way that you are. It's not your fault that every TV show that you turn on displays dysfunctional relationships not only as acceptable, but even attractive. It's not your fault that this modern family that we grew up in is oftentimes very dysfunctional. You didn't choose your family. You didn't choose what was done to you in childhood, in high school. You didn't choose that. It's not your fault that your ideal person has been shaped and warped by modern media. Like, I was literally reading this Disney book last night, and it was The Little Mermaid, and I'm like, you have Little Mermaid, who is like this tiny little figure that has way too many curves for a cartoon, and then you have King Triton that's like the most jacked human you've ever seen on the planet, and he's like for sure 900 years old in this picture. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But that is what Disney has done to us, isn't it? It makes us believe that beauty has to look a certain way. It makes us believe that masculinity has to look a certain way. And friends, we've been deceived to believe that what we look at determines what's inside. And friends, if that's what you lead with, you are missing the prize. It is so much more than what you glance at, what you look at. It is what is inside you and what is inside another person. So tonight, I can't promise that you're going to find the one, although some of you maybe walked into the room wondering, are they here tonight? It's the person that I'm going to marry here tonight. Maybe some of you are rubbing shoulders with that person. You're on one of those date talk dates, where you're like, hey, we're kind of talking. There's this date talk at church. Put on my church cowboy hat. Come on with me. Some girls just scooted over just a little bit. I can't promise that tonight that you're going to find the one because I don't believe the one exists. I don't believe that you're on this quest for one person in 7 billion people that is the one. I believe honestly that there's thousands of people, for sure hundreds of people that many of you could date, that many of you could even marry. It's not the one, it's who will you choose? Who is the one that you will choose? My wife could have married a whole lot of guys, but she chose marrying me. There's a lot of solid, amazing, beautiful Christian women that were a part of this church that I potentially could have pursued to marriage, but I chose pursuing my wife, and ultimately I chose to commit my life to her. I can't promise that even if you enter the pathway of dating with a Christian that's not just a country boy Christian, but an actual deep Christian, somebody who has an authentic relationship with Jesus. Guys, I can't promise that you're not going to feel pressure. I can't promise that you're not going to feel pain. I can't promise that you're not going to feel confused sometimes because, ladies, you will be dating a man, and that, guys, we're just a little confusing sometimes. But I do believe that if you apply the principles that I'm going to talk about, there will be less pressure and more peace. There will be less pain and more opportunity for healing. There will be less confusion and more clarity. So with that, we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about the person. Who should we be looking for? Last week, we talked about singleness. The week before that, we talked about discipline. This is the third week of our Let's Talk About series, and it's time to talk about dating. And it's time to talk about what do we need to look for in the person. A little backstory for those of you who've never heard Rachel, my story. I'm from Denver, Colorado, came to Baylor because my sister is at Baylor, and met Rachel my sophomore year at a fraternity 80s rock party on the second floor of what was called Deck House. No, it was not a dry party. It was fairly wild. And she came in dressed up very 80s. I always say she looked like Grease Lightning, wearing a leather jacket. I still remember a picture of her sitting on the back of a Harley that night at some point. So that's what started off our friendship. She added me on Facebook shortly thereafter to tag me in pictures. And then ensued a situationship. You ever been there before? A situationship. So we started out as friends, but then we started talking way more than friends do, started hanging out way more than friends do, but we didn't have a title for it. And then we kissed, and we're like, I don't know if we're supposed to kiss, and we found ourselves in the situationship, so we're like, maybe we should just go ahead and fall into the pathway that is called dating. And so we started dating with good intentions. After all, when she met me, she met a good old-fashioned Christian cowboy. I knew how to talk like a Christian. I knew how to talk about faith. I knew how to talk about going to church, even though I slept through church many, many Sundays, freshman, sophomore, into junior year. But I knew how to come across like a Christian. But here's who I was on the inside. What she didn't necessarily know is that I was a serial dater. I was a guy that had been in and out of relationships since grade school, and I wasn't even allowed to date in grade school. Like my mom found a note that said I was dating this girl in 6th grade in my pants when she was doing the wash. She told me to break up with her the next day. It was tragic, but the girl really just laughed at the fact that my mom told her to break up with her. And then shortly thereafter, I started a relationship in high school that went way too fast, way too quick. It went way too far, way too fast. Broke up with her, got in another relationship, broke up with her, got in another relationship, and then next thing I know, I'm at Baylor in this totally dysfunctional relationship, break up with her, and then here I meet Rachel my junior year. I was idealistically looking for the perfect woman, even though my life was a total and complete mess. See, the reality is I was not really looking for a person. I was addicted to the buzz. You know that relationship buzz that you get when the ding goes off on your phone when you're getting that text from somebody? I was addicted to that. I was addicted to the buzz of attention whenever I flirted with somebody and I received it in return. I was addicted to the thrill of the chase, but then when I caught what I was chasing, I got bored and moved on. I was addicted to the buzz. And behind me was a trail of broken relationships, a trail of broken hearts, all because on my inside I was so insecure, so identityless, only wearing Christianity as a cowboy hat, totally missing Christ's transformation on the inside. And so there I meet Rachel, looking like a Christian cowboy. Now, Rachel came in from high school angry and very frustrated because of family brokenness. She sought identity in relationships and had a ton of walls up with guys until she met me, the good Christian cowboy, or at least the guy that came across like a Christian. And so she began to let her walls down. Because after all, whoever wears a cowboy hat must be a cowboy. Whoever acts like a Christian must be a Christian. So as her walls came down, she became vulnerable to me. And because I was not transformed on the inside, I took advantage of her weakness. And what ensued was an extremely dysfunctional marriage, or extremely dysfunctional relationship that was basically like a marriage. And let me just say this. Friends, if you date like you're married, when you break up, it'll feel like a divorce. So again, there's different barometers, right? You have the barometer of time that you spend together. You have the barometer of physical. You have the barometer of intimacy, and that could be sharing emotions. That could be sharing spiritual things. For us, all three of those were maxed out completely. There would be no difference between that and what it should look like in marriage, but all of those spaces, the physical, the sex, the sexual intimacy is reserved for the covenant of marriage that comes with a forever commitment, not a feel-good moment. And so because of that, when we were in this acting married but super dysfunctional, fighting like nasty, I mean, it was ugly. Eventually, we would go on to break up, kind of get back together again, break up again. It was my doing, and I was a total idiot in how I did it. I shattered her heart, because remember, she had let her walls down. She was tricked into believing that because I talked like a Christian, I was actually transformed by Christ. What that led to was us going separate ways. And in our time of being separate, we both found Jesus in a powerful way. Now, let me just pause here and say this. If you're in the room right now and you're in a dysfunctional relationship and you're thinking to yourself, this is the part where you get hope for your current dysfunctional relationship, go ahead and take that thought, identify it, and then delete it. Because my hope at that point was absolutely not in getting back together with Rachel. Rachel's hope at that point when we were broken up was 100% not getting back together with my doofus self. We are completely and utterly going, no matter what, we have to put a foundation first of Jesus. We had to meet Jesus, his unconditional love. We had to get connected to community. We were living for ourselves. He had to purify us both so that when we finally came back together a year and a half later, we both had a foundation of Jesus to stand on that led us to a relationship where Christ was the foundation, where purity was fought for. And I'm so thankful that I can say today that when we dated that, what would have been essentially the third go-around after we found Jesus, we were able to honor purity. We were able to honor one another. We actually didn't even kiss until we were engaged because we're like, we don't even want to get close to that old life that we live. We don't even want to get close to our old selves. We want to live as our new selves. So as we entered marriage, we were absolutely not perfect, but we were being transformed. And it wasn't that we were being transformed by each other. We were being transformed from the inside out by Jesus. So as I talk to you tonight about the person, and you're wondering, what does the person look like? What does the person act like? What does the person think like? I want to challenge you to reset the way that you prioritize what you're looking for. See, we've been conditioned to love filters, right? We love filters. Not only just coffee filters, but like photo filters. Because photo filters remove the things that you don't want, those blemishes, the pimples, the whole deal, and they kind of smooth it all out, and then you come out and you're like, that's what I look like. And it's like, no, that's what a filter plus you looks like. But we also love filters when we go online shopping. Anybody else? You get on Amazon, you search, and there's like a bajillion options. And so you're like, I'm going to filter. What do I want to filter by first? Amazon Prime. And so you click Amazon Prime, and it's like, gets rid of all that junk you have to pay for the shipping. And then you get to prioritize, I don't want that 3-star review. I want a 5-star review. So you click that, and boom, now there's only 100 options in front of you. We are obsessed with filters. And then we apply that same methodology to relationships. And every room we're walking into, you're going through a filtration process, aren't you? If you're single, if you're not in a relationship, and maybe even if you're dating, you're going, hey, is this person the one or is that person the one? And you're going through a filtration process. What I've found is that more often than not, this is the most common diagram for what the filter looks like. You're looking first, who am I attracted to? And then you're moving on, who do I have chemistry with? Whatever even that means. And then you're going, but are they Christian? You're like, necklaces, any crosses, any ichthus tattoos, like what you got? Is this guy or girl a Christian? Have you ever found yourself like identifying to your best friend what your ideal person looks like? And you're like, you start with the color of hair. I'm more of a blonde kind of guy. I'm more into brunettes. I like braids. I like dreads. I like black hair. I like that like silver gray blonde looking hair that's been happening. And then you're like, but then what about skin tone? I like light skin. I like dark skin. I like caramel. I like olive skin. And you're like, are you eating something? Like, and then you move on to like how tall or how short. I'm a pretty tall girl, so I need a tall guy. I'm a pretty short dude, so Lord knows I need a short woman. How are they built? Are they athletic? Are they thin? Are they sturdy? What do you need? I'm sturdy. I need somebody sturdier. And so you like have this list, and you're like looking from. So you're like, okay, I want some dreads. She's got to be tall, athletic, and she's got to be in this room tonight. And so boom, you just eliminated a lot of people in the room. And now you're going to the next one. What are their interests? What is the chemistry? Like if you mix me plus her, is it going to smell like potpourri or poo-poo? So you're like, well, I'm into sports, so they've got to be into sports. Like, I want to go play sports. She can't be better than me at sports, but I want her to play sports. I like music. I like to play instruments. I can't really sing, but maybe we can write music together. So he's got to like music, songs about our love. I like intellectual people. They're really smart guys. They're really smart guys that oftentimes aren't the ones that are playing sports. So I need the learner, the reader. They have to love outdoors. They have to love indoors. They have to be outgoing or not outgoing. I want a quiet guy. I want a loud guy. I want a submissive girl. I want a dominant girl. Like you have all these different things. And then you get to that next part that you're like, now let's talk about Christian. No, now you get nitpicky. It's like you don't even see it in here because it's attraction, chemistry, and then it's like nitpicky. I don't want a guy with shoes with his mouth open. I went on a date with him, shoes with his mouth open. I'm done. I don't like a guy with BO. He needs to take a shower. I don't like a girl that giggles like this. I don't like a girl that laughs like that. I don't like, and then you're like, and then I want a good old-fashioned Christian. Because my mom told me I need to marry a Christian woman when I went to Baylor. That's why I came to Baylor. Ring by spring, got to find a Christian woman. And at that point, you're down to like maybe one person in all of the entire planet. And they may or may not even speak English. So now you're like, well, now I got to learn Spanish. The problem with this filtration system is that it gets to the most important piece last. It's ineffective. It's slow. Have you ever outsorted your shopping list and you can't find what you want? And you're like, oh, that's because I clicked Lulu's and nobody can afford Lulu's, so they're not on sale here. And so I gotta like expand beyond that brand a little bit. Some of y'all need to expand upon the brand of man that you're looking for. Like just because he's not tall, dark, and handsome with a six-pack and you're writing him off, but maybe he loves Jesus with all his heart. And that six-pack, friends, is gonna go away. 99% guaranteed. But a foundation of Christ will remain. But then the reality is that the same filtration system that we use to apply on others, we start to apply on ourselves. And we start to go, man, I'm not getting asked out, so I must not be attractive. I'm not getting asked out, so maybe I'm not that good looking, or maybe I'm not that funny. Maybe I need to be more funny. Maybe I need to tell more jokes. So you look up jokes and they're still not funny. And you're like, what do I need to do? And the last thing on your priority is like, I want to just love Jesus more, because you can't see that. Like you can see looks, you can see how funny you are, but oftentimes you can just put on a cowboy hat and fake it till you make it with Christianity. And so the focal point becomes, how do I change who I am instead of being secure in who God's made me to be? Friends, we don't need another Justin Bieber. We don't need another whoever out there in your imagination you're trying to be like. We need you to be you. And your future spouse, if and when you get married, needs you to be you, who God uniquely made you to be. The reality is that both of these things begin to build pressure. You ever felt pressure in dating? I remember in high school, please don't tell my mom or the police this, I built something that was called a works bomb. And basically the way that you use it, thank you, at least one other person has blown stuff up, is you take a 2-liter bottle. I debated doing this as a sermon illustration and got shut down because World Mandate is this week. So you're welcome for not blowing things up on stage this week. You take a 2-liter bottle, you take tinfoil, you insert it, you take this other material that I'm not going to tell you what to do because I can't tell you how to make bombs at church. You put it in it, and then you wait, and you sit there, and what happens is it starts to smoke, and you're like, cool. And you step back a little bit, and then it starts to expand a little bit more, and this 2-liter that's normally this big gets this big, and then goes boom, boom. We used to like just walk down the street and set them out, and then you get a mile away, and you hear boom, 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 and then you'd hear cops coming, and we'd run. But the point being is that when you put certain ingredients together, it creates pressure that ultimately will lead to an explosion. When you filter with these ingredients of attraction first, chemistry second, and then Jesus maybe, you are putting ingredients together that are bound to be an explosion. And maybe it's an explosion before you even start dating, and you're like, why didn't he take me on a second date? And you're just totally distraught over the fact that all this pressure has been building up from you, from your friends. I'm like, am I pretty enough? Is he gonna like me? All these things. Then you go on one date, he says no, and you're done. You're exploded, you're destroyed. Or maybe it's later on in the relationship when all you've been thinking about is how attractive they are, and then you begin to start to see on the inside that it's not matching up, and boom, that relationship explodes. When we have the wrong ingredients, we add pressure that's not meant to be there that ultimately will lead to an explosion. And at the core of that all is because if the focal point is this, what this says is that what you're looking for is to benefit yourself. I want to find somebody that benefits me, that looks good on the outside, that works with me, and that maybe has Jesus, but Jesus might be secondary. But then we look at Philippians 2, 3, and 4, and we see a different invitation that says this: do nothing. Everybody say do nothing. Out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Wow, do nothing. That's fairly limiting. It's not like do nothing on Monday through Thursday out of being selfish, but Friday and Saturday, that's your day. Or that one day of the year that you can be selfish, your birthday. It's like insert that. Do nothing out of selfish ambition except for on your birthday, then be extremely selfish. No, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Some of y'all need to put this on your mirror.
I need to wake up every day, look in the mirror, and go, no, today I'm going to choose humility. Today I'm going to choose to value others above myself. Today I'm going to serve before I ask to be served. And if you do that every day, guess what? You are going to become the person that somebody else is looking to marry. And the reality is that if that is what you're embodying, then most likely the person that finds you is going to be looking for the same thing. So this is what the world tells us, but what wisdom tells us is not that it's about attraction first. It's obviously the flip. It's what's their relationship with God? And if you start there and then go, well, I mean, sure, do we have some of the same interests? You can adjust those. Your interests change over time. Attraction, Lord knows beauty is fleeting and it's only temporary, but of course, you want to be at least attracted to the person that you're going out with, but do they love Jesus? Since I've been married for 6 years, I've seen marriages fall apart, and I've never heard a marriage fall apart because I'm not attracted. No, what causes a marriage to fall apart is when Christ is removed from the foundation of the relationship, or when Christ was never a part of the relationship to begin with. You know that famous passage in 2 Corinthians, it says, do not be yoked together. This is 2 Corinthians 6:14 if you're writing it down. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. Now, here's the key thing. What's a yoke? Like, y'all don't use yokes anymore. A yoke, speaking to my cowboy knowledge, is where two oxen are plowing a field together, and they have to have this wooden device over their shoulders so that they can pull together. They can do work together. They can accomplish together. And so what Paul is saying here is do not yoke, do not get on the same team with unbelievers. Sometimes this verse is used out of context to describe don't marry interracially, don't marry different economically than you. And that's just totally debunked. That is absolutely not true. What he is saying here is be careful and do not link up with somebody that does not have Jesus at the top of their priorities. Because you're going to be pulling a lot in life. You're going to be working hard in life. And if you're working with somebody else that doesn't have the same values, they're going to be pulling you apart. So who's running after Jesus? What do I enjoy? Who do I enjoy being with? And who am I attracted to? So what I want to do is, as much as this is helpful, I just want to get practical on, ladies, what should you look for in a man? Can I give you some, and the reality is everything that I'm about to give you is attached to a verse. Because you don't need like Luke's best idea of what a good Christian guy should look like. You need a biblical perspective of what should you look for in a husband. So I'm going to give you 3 different passages. Number 1, Proverbs 18:1-2. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. So here you have your first, beware. Ladies, beware of a man who isolates himself. Proverbs 18 goes on. He breaks out against all sound judgment. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only expressing his opinion. Have you ever seen a guy like that before? A guy who's flying solo, who's into the whole independence deal, who's doing his own thing and oftentimes loves talking about himself. Ladies, if you're surrounding yourself with a guy that only talks about himself, run. Because a guy who is going to date you and talk about himself is going to be a guy that you marry and only is going to talk about himself, and is going to be a guy who only cares about his needs, not yours, not your kids. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desires. But ladies, also beware of a man that is not submitted to anyone. If you are dating a man who is not submitted to a local church, who is not submitted in relationships, who is not being held accountable in community, run in the opposite direction. Because he is breaking out against all sound judgment, and he's a fool. He is a fool. Number 2, this is another beware statement. 2 Timothy 3:1-7 says this, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last day. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy. Ladies, you should be writing these down and being like, I'm looking for these qualities. Unholy, ungrateful, disobedient to their parents, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, and without self-control. Brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Having a form of godliness, but denying its power. You might be tricked when you think you see a form of godliness, but underneath the surface are all these things: a lack of self-control, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure. And then he goes on, they are the kind that worm their way into homes, gain control over gullible women. And as your pastor, I want you to beware of these men. And if you are a man that you're in this room going, I think they just read off the list that has to do with me, you need to know that there is grace available for you. But it comes in the shape of Jesus, not in the shape of a female. You do not need to go to a female to find the completion that you're looking for. Young men, you need to meet the living God. And if something twinged in you as I read through this, you need to take that to the foot of the cross and come clean in community. If you're not in community, get connected to community. Invite a guy in. And ladies, if you're dating a guy, if you go on date number one of your questions should be this: who are you accountable to? And then if he's like, no, my mom back home, what does that even mean? It means you call your mom occasionally. No, like what guy is speaking in your life? Proverbs 27:17, men says what? It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Last time I checked, iron doesn't sharpen iron by snuggling. Iron sharpens iron by aggressive motion. And some of y'all got to realize, men, that you need other men coming around in your life, getting in your face, calling out your identity. I remember a point when a friend of mine was screaming in my face because I was sleeping with my girlfriend. He came up to me and he literally was like, he wasn't that strong of a believer, so he had some choice words, but he was basically saying, what are you thinking? In a few more colorful words. And I'm thinking, if this dude is calling me to the carpet, I am off my rocker. And I remember going home that night and going, something needs to change in my life. And that was one of the puzzle pieces that led me to meeting with Jesus and leaving behind my old ways. So men, you need to have other men around you. James 1:19 says this: my brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Are you around a guy that is quick to speak, quick to get angry, and slow to listen? Play that forward. That's going to be a husband that is quick to speak, quick to get angry, and slow to listen. You want a man that is slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to become angry. Last, Galatians 5, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You're looking for the fruit of these things in this man's life. You cannot have fruit if he's not abiding in the vine. You want to find a man that's abiding, he needs to have those different qualities. Now, men, I'm going to go real quick, and then I want my wife to come up here because it's about to get real good with her here. Proverbs 18:22, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Gentlemen, you need to know, you find a good wife, you find a good thing. I have found an incredible wife. I've found an incredible person. Proverbs 27:15 says, a quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaky roof in a rainstorm. That sounds fairly painful. So if she is a gossiper, if she is somebody that is talking badly about other people, if she is constantly fighting, then maybe there's something that needs to be met with in Jesus, and that's not for you to meet. It is for you to move on so that she can meet with Jesus fully. Proverbs 31, and I could go through this whole thing. It is incredible. It is empowering to women. And it is when I look at my wife, I see many of these qualities in her. Proverbs 31:16, she considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. Check her out, entrepreneur. Look at that. My wife's an entrepreneur. She's not somebody that just sits back and consumes. No, oftentimes she has been the breadwinner in the family. When I took on a role in ministry and she was running her photography business, she took home more in her paycheck than I did. Because she is a Proverbs 31 woman, Proverbs 31:18. She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. Again, there's this responsibility. My wife's, one of her top 5 strengths finders' strengths is responsibility. She's incredibly responsible. Verse 25, she's clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. When I look at my wife, though she may be small, she is strong. I mean, like physically strong, like she gets pretty intense sometimes, but she is strong. She's always had this strength within her that I think is beautiful and draws me toward her. And then verse 30, charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Again, friends, is Jesus the foundation of the person that you're looking to pursue? That will help you be way more efficient. And even though they might not be your 5-star attractive person that you're looking for, if they are 5-star in love with Jesus, you will have a relationship with a recipe to win, to have an incredible marriage and an incredible family. So speaking of an incredible marriage, y'all ready to get my wife up here? Give it up for Rachel Whyte. Rach, real talk, how much do you love my cowboy hat? Scale of 1 to 10.
I did get it for him for Christmas because that's what he wanted, but I'm still getting used to it.
Here, I'll move this back.
Like tonight, I was like, are you going to wear that the whole time you preach? I was like, no, I'm not.
At life group, my life group the other night, she called me out. She's like, are you wearing your hat to life group? I was like, trying it out, okay? Just trying it out. Okay, so here's what we're going to do for the next 25 minutes. We want to do a Q&A time. And we talked a lot about the person, but I recognize we also have the pathway. What is the actual process of discovering, is this person the person that you want to spend forever with? And so as we're talking, if you have questions that come up, you can text them to that number on the screen. And we will absolutely get to them in the best way that we can. And they'll be texted to my phone up here. Y'all good? Can we take a deep breath? Okay, so we want to talk about the process of dating. Why don't you read this psalm in just a second? So when you think about dating, do you guys realize that dating is relatively new? Like past 100+ years, dating has been a thing. Before that, it was absolutely not a thing. And so when you look at the Word of God, you actually see literally nothing about this is how you date. Nothing, not one thing. It's not even mentioned. And so what we are led to do is either we go, well, I guess we just figure it out, or what wisdom would say is we look at the Word of God to discover these same principles that apply to life actually apply to dating relationships. And so we want to unpack a few different ones of those. Why don't you read that, Psalm 16.
Psalm 16:6 says, "The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance."
Yeah. So, do you want to unpack that at all? I'll go first. This is our marriage, so this is what I've had to learn. I'm an external processor, so I'm always ready to talk.
I'm like, we didn't talk about this. I don't know.
Yeah, but James 1 says everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So I'm like, babe, do you have something to say? And if not,
thank you.
Then it's my turn. I just want to say, it took me 2 years of marriage and hundreds of dollars of counseling to get there. So gentlemen, congratulations, you got that one for free. So the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. The pathway that we're talking about is point A is beginning a relationship. Ideally, the end of the pathway is the beginning of marriage. And so that's really what we're describing. But this pathway has gotten a lot longer over the years. It started out as mostly like a courtship, or some places pre-arranged marriages. I'm not recommending that. But regardless, this pathway's gotten longer. Millennials are getting married at the average age of 28, and I would assume next gen is going to get married even later. So this pathway to dating is getting longer. And I don't know if you've been to Cameron Park. It's a long pathway. But what makes that pathway straight and amazing is that you have boundary lines. On one side, you have the cliffs. On the other side, you have the water. And so that allows you to go forward. But what happens if you're on a pathway that's not marked with a boundary line is inevitably you will actually end up going in a massive circle. And what will happen is that will become a pathway to nowhere. That is what a relationship with no boundaries looks like. It's a pathway to nowhere. Ends up looking a lot like a marriage with none of the commitment, and we already talked about what that will lead to. It leads to a breakup. It will feel like a divorce, and if you get into a marriage, it's going to lead to a lot of confusion and a lot of challenges along the marriage. And so, Rach, what would you say are a couple helpful boundaries in dating? We'll start specifically, before we get to physical, what are communication boundaries?
So I think what Luke referenced earlier, and really what Carl has done his previous sermons on for dating in the past, is kind of the barometers of when you're in a certain stage of a relationship, all of the levels should be kind of coming up at the same time. And so when you first start talking, as they say. You're talking all of the time. That doesn't necessarily make sense with the progression of the relationship. Is it sin to talk to somebody all the time? No. It's helpful to talk, to get to know each other. But as far as like boundaries guarding your heart, not going somewhere too soon in your heart, I think it's helpful to bring that communication up slowly as the commitment increases.
Awesome. I would use Philippians 4:8 as a great boundary line indicator. It says this: finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And I would apply that same thing to a dating relationship. Is it pure? Is it noble? Noble inspires integrity. Is it admirable? Is it right? Is it lovely? Is it excellent or praiseworthy? A phrase that I've heard a while before, we oftentimes are the ones standing on stage preaching, but are you dating in a way that you could preach a message about it? Because ultimately, your life is your message. Your life is the gospel lived out through your life. And so your dating relationship, like if you're living with if you have a bunch of roommates and you're sneaking out late at night to go hang out with your girlfriend till all hours of the night, even though you might think, oh yeah, we just watched a movie, it was fine, you're coming back and what are they thinking? Are they thinking, man, maybe whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, are they thinking, man, this guy is saying that he's a Christian, but he's acting a totally different way? So I think that the Philippians 4:8 is just a great anchor for boundaries. Anything you want to add to that? Okay, so yeah, so then on the physical boundaries realm.
Can I say something?
Please.
What I was thought of earlier, which is kind of a weird analogy, but I think it is true, is that people want to ask all the time, like, how far is too far in dating? They like really want to know. And I think really whatever you're comfortable doing in front of your parents should be what you do. And that might sound weird to you. Maybe you don't love to be affectionate, so there's like some gray there. But if you wouldn't you probably wouldn't make out in front of your parents. And so why would you do something that you wouldn't do in front of other people in secret or when you're alone? I think anything where you have to dim the lights or you have to be under the influence of alcohol, there's a reason why when people drink, they do different things that they wouldn't do normally. And so I think a good standard would be that whatever you wouldn't do in front of somebody's mom when you're dating them, you shouldn't do in the secret place because they're not yours. It's not like when you date, as you date longer or even when you get engaged, that they become more of yours. They aren't yours until you get married. Yeah. And so they're not yours to experiment with. People say well, you got to get to know that part of them. I don't believe that's true.
Yeah.
I did plenty of experimenting before we got married, sadly, and I don't think that's true at all. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's good. And on that same note, I love what she said on they are not your anything other than friend. We put girlfriend in front of it, we put boyfriend in front of it, but they are not your anything. You have no possession over that person. You have a word commitment, which absolutely you should honor, but other than that, men, you have no possession over the woman that you're dating. You have no authority over her life. You have no ability to tell her what she can or can't do because she's not yours, she's his. And you don't want to mess with him. Trust me. And so if you find yourself in a relationship where you're getting possessive of the other person and being concerned with who are they texting, what are they doing, what are they looking at, and you start to, what happens is that being possessive becomes being controlling.
And a controlling boyfriend or girlfriend will be a controlling husband or wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even more so.
Yeah, it's only gonna ramp up as you go forward. So as we're looking at this, I want to hit a couple different parts. The starting of a relationship, so how are you getting into a relationship? The what does it actually look like in the relationship? And then the other two options. How do you know when you're moving forward? How do you know when to break up? How do you break up? So can we go through some of those different things? So start well, end well. Number one, start well, end well. So in other words, start with clarity. And gentlemen, I would encourage you to initiate that clarity. So what that looks like is instead of going, so here's what's not a date. Hey, it's 10 o'clock, I texted you, you want to come over and watch Netflix. Ladies, don't ever respond to that text message. I'm serious, don't ever respond. And actually tell that guy the next day, I'm done talking to you. Because if a dude's texting you at 10 o'clock at night to watch Netflix, he is not wanting to take you on a date. He is wanting to fulfill his desires, which are going to lead him towards destruction. So what is a date is not a Snapchat, you want to go on a date. It's not a text message, hey, what's up? It's, hi, I'm going to either see you in person, I'm going to give you a phone call, and I'm going to say, lady, hopefully. Ma'am. No, but hey, I would love to take you on a date. Could I take you to lunch? Could I take you to coffee? Could I take you to dinner? And just call a date a date. The weirdest thing is when people are like, can I take you to get some food? Can we go to Penland? Like, do not go to Penland either. Like, there are great, fairly inexpensive restaurants in Waco. So start well. And then the reality is let that first date or two or three not be a pressure cooker. And friends of ladies who are going on dates, you need to hear this. Don't make it a pressure cooker. So you're like waiting, how'd it go? How'd it go? Do you like him? Do you like him? Is he smiling? Did he chew with his mouth
What
open?
did he say?
No.
And then what did he say?
Yeah.
And then what did you say?
And guys, y'all don't do that, do you? Sup? How'd it go? Cool. Ladies, that is a deal, isn't it? And so friends of ladies who are going on dates, be secure that they're going on a date. And less is more. It's not that it's not that you fake excitement or that you're being way overly excited. It's just, hey, how'd it go? Awesome. How can I be praying for you? And be that supportive person. Don't be the pressure-added person. So then you go on dates 1 and 2. And so what happens, I saw another question. What do you think about situations where you keep hanging out and the guy never asks the girl out, causing a lot of confusion? I mean, ladies, do we have any strong women in the house tonight? Okay, so what would it be like for you to say, hey, I enjoy hanging out with you. I'm done hanging out with you unless you want to go on a date. Like, my wife would have done that, 100%. So, like, why not? Why do you feel like, oh, no, I just have to sit here? Like, no, you have a voice. You are strong. Remember Proverbs 31, strength and dignity. So be like, listen, bro, you going to ask me out or not? Don't go to his friends and be like, is he going to ask me out? Don't go to your friend and ask your friend to ask his friend, is he going to ask me out? Because what happens is that builds pressure. Now, you have at least 4, but it's really more like 14 people that will eventually know about that first date. And so then when it doesn't go well and the guy's like, oh, sorry, I thought we were just going to Penland. And the girl's like, I thought we were getting married. And then it's this huge explosion. Don't be surprised. Like it's a first date.
And I would say for girls, don't be afraid to ask for clarity. I think I've seen a lot of friends that are confused and don't really know what's going on, but they're afraid to ask because they don't want to scare the guy away. And I'm like, if that would scare him away, he's really not someone that you want to be with long term anyways. Ooh. Just to say, whether or not it scares them away because you're being a forward woman. Yeah. Or because they're like, oh, wait, dude, she's like too serious right now. Yeah. I just wanted to like hang out for like 6 weeks, like all the time. Yeah. No, like you can say, hey, so we've hung out a lot. I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts? Yeah. Are we just friends or is there something more? And if he's like, I don't know, then be like, great, well then I'm gonna hang out with some other friends. Yeah. You know, if you're starting to like him, because you're not on the same page.
But what if he like texts you? Like, shouldn't you respond to make him, like, you don't want to hurt his feelings, right?
No, I would say that goes both ways. I've heard guys and girls who say like, well, I don't want to like not respond. I'm like, well then that's why you have a bunch of guys or girls liking you, because you're leading them on. You're like, you don't just, and even whenever I was not really walking with the Lord and had plenty of issues, I never really had the issue of like, oh, I'm just going to like talk to guys all the time because it makes me feel good, because then you actually get attention that you really don't want, and it's like it just gets confusing and like a lot to manage. So just be clear and don't do things for attention. Don't keep somebody stringing them along because you like how it feels. Do what's loving and be clear.
Yeah. So then you started a relationship, things are going well, you're going on dates, and then eventually it comes to that next juncture. Are we going to become official, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever? Obviously, that clarity is just helpful. And the way I would describe it is if you're on a pathway, you need road markers along the way to make sure you're still headed in the right direction. And if you haven't had a road marker in a while, I think it's safe for either side to ask, hey, where are we at? That's called communication. And believe it or not, if you get married, you're going to want to use that gift of communication, which means checking in. Just tonight, we're saying, hey, how are we doing? What do we need to work on? How do we need to grow in this? And in a dating relationship, those check-ins are not only a good idea, they're very, very helpful towards moving forward to the end journey. And if there's challenges, it's helpful for it to not just be, again, if you're moving towards breakup, don't just be like, going good, going good, going good, going gone. And you're like, wait, what? I thought we were good. Like, bring them into the process of like, hey, I'm struggling. I don't know if it's you or me, but I just want to bring you into that. And you keep moving forward. Obviously, if it's the first date, it's different than if you've been dating for 6 months. Take into account how long you guys have been moving forward on that pathway together.
The last time we dated, so I guess the third time, when we dated the first couple times, we, again, had no boundaries, so we kind of talked about everything, and there were no boundaries. And so we talked a lot about getting married. We talked a lot about our lives, and that was really, really hurtful for me. My biggest thing was like feeling shameful and embarrassed that like I went there with someone and then it didn't work out. And so part of that was fear in me, which is obviously not good. But I think there is wisdom in having boundaries with what you talk about. So the third time that we dated, we didn't sit around and talk about our futures as though we were going to skip off into the sunset. I was like, you can put your money where your mouth is, and, literally, and then figuratively. And whenever you're ready to propose, then we can start planning our lives. But we've done this once before. I don't want to sit here and daydream because it gives me butterflies and makes me feel good. But we would occasionally have conversations where he would say, hey, just so you know, like, I like you a lot, and because we didn't say, it's the one thing we didn't do is we didn't say I love you until we got engaged. And so he would say, I like you a lot, care about you a lot. I'm still pursuing you with the hope that we will get married, and I just wanted you to know that. And that was reassuring to me without drawing out my heart in a direction that was unhealthy for me. I know there are Christians who love Jesus and people who love Jesus who do talk about marriage, and I think that that's okay in some settings, but I think there really is a fine line between really starting to put your hope in it whenever it's not really time yet.
Awesome. We'll probably have time for one more question, and then tomorrow we'll jump on, tomorrow we'll jump on Instagram Live and do some more
News
Q&A.
to me.
We did it. We did that last week just to, again, have some dialogue. And somebody was asking from a physical standpoint, boundaries, physical boundaries, kissing, all that different stuff. 1 Corinthians 6, 18 through 20. And in the next couple weeks, we're going to go into sex and marriage. So we'll unpack the sexual side of things at a deeper level in the future. But I just want to give you this verse that says this: flee from sexual immorality. And so I want you to consider that whatever you're choosing to step forward in, is it fleeing or is it clinging to sexual immorality? And this,
or towing the line.
Or towing the line, right. Or are you running in the opposite direction, or are you walking right up to the edge of the cliff? And I've never seen somebody get married and then say, man, I wish I'd gone further in dating. I just haven't. I've never met a Christian that's like, hey, I have a really healthy marriage because we went this far in dating. No, it's the opposite. It's those that preserve their purity to whatever degree, other than, obviously any sort of sex is wrong outside of the confines of marriage, and we'll unpack that more. But the other stuff, go back through Philippians 4:8, whatever is pure, whatever is noble, whatever is right. Look at 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee from sexual immorality. And then look at 1 Corinthians 10:23 that says, No one should seek their own good, but each for the good of others. Stop wondering what you can get away with and start looking at what's good for the other person. Is this ultimately going to be the best for them, or is this going to lead them away from the top of their filter, from that person of Jesus? Amen? All right, well, let's go ahead and stand to our feet. And, we recognize we are absolutely not the experts by any means, but we know that if we can get you guys to dig into the Word, if we can get you guys to look more at Jesus and to set the top of your filter on Him, who is loving God, how am I loving God, that will set you up to a better pathway towards marriage.